Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix Live with myself, Dr. Martin, and James Junkin. Today is our Stump the Chump, our monthly Stump the Chump, or Ask Us Anything, and we'll give you an answer. It may not be something you like, but it certainly will be a good opinion. Hey, James, welcome to our show.
Hey, man, 97th episode. I am in Navarre Beach, Florida, in the Risk Matrix Podcast Mobile Command Center. Roll Tide. That's what I'm talking about.
That's right. That's right. He's on vacation and he's joining us from the beach. So we all should be honored that he's doing that because James doesn't really get much of a vacation. So thank you, James, for taking time out and being with us today. Like I said, it's our well, like James said, it's our 97th episode, and we're live here with Stump the Chump. But I do want to say a shout out to our sponsor. We are powered by Veriforce, our every episode of the Risk Matrix. But I just want to let you know that our sponsor is actually the booth that Veriforce is going to have at ASSP coming up at the ASSP conference, and we'll have more on that at the end of the show. So James, unless you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. Look, I'm super excited about going down to ASSP in July. I will be speaking. Also, Dr. David Daniels and Stephen OJ, who are members of our Strategic Advisory Board, will also be speaking at the conference. Hey, come by the booth. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Let us know that you're going to be there, that you're a listener to the podcast. I'd be glad, really honored to meet everyone in person. So shoot us some messages, man, so we can interact while we're down in Orlando.
Thanks, James. All right, so we're going to let you guys start putting those questions in the chat for us, but we're going to start it off with a few things that have touched James and I over the last week. I've been posting pretty regularly on LinkedIn, and one of my posts, James, I'll let you call me out for it. One of my posts I put up there, James wants me to talk about a little bit.
Well, this has been something that I've seen on LinkedIn, and there's been a lot of conversation about what's going on with NIOSH, about governmental cutbacks. You know, people reached out and had a lot of advocacy about what's happening at NIOSH. So you posted an article about what's going on at NIOSH, and I thought it was pretty powerful. So if you want to kind of frame up what that article's about, I think that'd be really cool.
Sure, and I'm glad you called me out on it, James, because you know, I feel kind of passionately about what I'm about to say. Yes, I know everybody's worked up about NIOSH. Yes, I know everybody's writing their senators and their congressmen and doing all kinds of stuff and complaining that one of the biggest cuts was NIOSH and we lose our research funding and et cetera, right? So what I'd like to say, and what I did say in my post is, you know, I get it. I get it. We all get it. You know what? Sometimes we have to just deal with the facts and we need to move on. And the way I think we need to move on is some of these people that are complaining need to shut it, put their money where their mouth is, and or their time and efforts, and do the research that needs to be done. And I'm not talking about here's my pet peeve coming out, James. I'm not talking about research on the safety profession and our degrees and certifications good and all that kind of stuff. We need to start doing research that really has some meaning and not relying on, you know, the federal government or NIOSH it's great that we get that when we get that, but we shouldn't be relying on that to do good research. Okay. And so I'm putting it out there. So James, you can hit back at me if you want.
100%. Control the things that you can control, right? Who's the best to do research, to analyze data, to come up with new ideas? The people at the process, the folks that are doing the work, right? So all this angst and anxiety and the sky's falling, I can't control what the government does or doesn't do, particularly related to NIOSH. But what I can control is my contributions to the safety profession. So I'm kind of like you, man. If you feel that passionate about it, get involved. there are plenty of committees that are there with ANSI looking and begging people to participate. I serve on several committees, and we have this big list of people who are members of this committee. But like in most things in life, we really just come down to about a handful of us that are actually active and participate and lend our opinions and expertise to it. So if you're wanting to make a difference in the profession, hey, you want to make a difference in bringing workers home safe, then my challenge to you, and I think Dr. Martin's challenge to you, is stop waiting for the government to do it for you and get active in some of these industry associations, get active in some of these consensus standard groups that are out there, like ANSI, ASTM, all that. Get active. Let your voice be heard. Do independent research. I mean, the best research that I've seen, Dr. Martin's coming out of CSRA right now. And,
Yep.
you know,
and I tagged them. I tagged CSRA. I tagged What Works Institute, which is John Doney, has now left NSC, and he's got What Works Institute, and a lot of the people from the NSC are over there. And I think that they could probably use your money too to help them do some research. So, I mean, again, I get it, right? We lost something valuable, but we can't dwell on that. And, you know, I know people are writing and whatever, and it may or may not make the difference. If it makes you feel better, do that. But what would really make me feel better is if, you know, you have ideas or whatever, and you look for the money and the support to do it yourself. And by all means, if you got a great idea and you want a researcher, you can come to James and I and you know, give us some ideas, because we like to get thought leadership out there whenever we can. And thanks to Bill Trivet for saying you nailed it. You know, that there's that episode of You Nailed It Cakes, right? Have you ever seen that, James?
no,
I don't know. I don't know how well I nailed it, but they give you a really nice cake, and then the amateurs get to go ahead and make the cake and see if they can make it just like it. And they always say you nailed it, but it's never quite that way.
Hey, guess what? I want somebody to send me a cake. I look like I need a cake.
Yeah,
right?
you need a cake.
Beach body needs a cake.
Bill Vandersan, 100% agree. This is an opportunity. Bill, you're right. We just need to get out there off our butts and do this. So go ahead, James. You got a pet peeve you wanted to open with today.
Yes. In the middle of the assessment season, we have a lot of assessments going on. Pet peeve number one: safety professionals that try to pawn off training via safety meetings. Okay. A safety meeting is not training. It's short. It doesn't go in depth enough so many times. Go ahead.
Let's roll that back. It depends on the safety meeting, but what you're talking about is like a toolbox talk or a quick meeting in the morning. It's not like a planned 1 hour meeting that's going to look at this topic, right? It's like those 15 minutes things that we do at the beginning of the day. And they're saying, oh, well, we've touched on fall protection. Well, you know, last time I checked, touched on fall protection was not what the regulation looks for.
That's not what the regulation says. Just because it's in the title of the safety meeting does not constitute real training. All right. So we could spend the rest of the show with us going on talking about going to OSHA publication 2254, industry recommendations on creating training matrices and evaluating your training based on your training needs based on the regulations and what OSHA says you should do, et cetera. We could spend the rest of the time here on that. But let me just encourage safety professionals to do this. Have a written training plan, okay? A safety meeting most likely is not going to constitute enough information to have everything you need to meet the regulatory standards and most likely your contractual standards. So everybody's looking for the easy button when it comes to safety. Hey, can I just get this app? Can I go and get this online training? Can I go? Safety's hard. It's hard. It takes effort and resources. So in another episode, we're going to talk to you about how to fight for those resources so that you can be adequately resourced in order to develop training and effective training for your workers. All right, so that's my pet peeve for,
All right, all
for the,
right.
we
Well,
got
so
a
I'm
lot of
gonna,
questions coming
we
in.
got some stuff coming in here. Somebody asked about lone workers. How do you effectively manage the safety of lone workers? I know you've told the story before, James, of people locking themselves in the truck on one of your sites and not having their phones and stuff like that. Well, one of the things for take away from that story that you tell, James, is having GPS and be able to track them and track their phones. That's a way to manage lone workers. But there are a lot of devices on the market right now that you can get also that will monitor, health aspects like heartbeat, heat stroke type stuff, that upload to the cloud and you can monitor them live. So what are your thoughts, James?
Oh, yes. I think safety's built like this. Okay. This is my opinion. Have a written program, a policy, a procedure. You train on the policy and procedure. That's your rules, right? What the expectations are. It's your system for workers to follow. And then you implement that policy and procedure. And then you have to have a mechanism to ensure compliance or to the policy and procedure. The same thing's true with your lone worker policy, right? Or your lone worker program. It begins with a written program, training and expectations, and then you need some type of assessment where you go in the field and check on these lone worker policies or lone worker situations. I agree with you, Dr. Martin. Lone worker creates a tremendous opportunity for the leveraging of technology, right? To be able to ensure their safety. But we still got to go out there. We still got to check on these workers and make sure that the hazards are being appropriately identified and the proper controls are in place.
I would just want to add that a policy is just a policy if you don't actually put it into action, right? So it's not enough just to have that policy. You have to actually need the people in the field to know what it entails, what they need to turn on and off and the things they need to do to keep themselves safe, but also to communicate with whoever's monitoring them, right? So a policy is just paper. It's just paper or a file. You need that implementation.
I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Paper safety is not real safety.
Yep.
Okay. I can have a book on advanced calculus, right? Written by the top physicists in the world. If it just sits right over there on the table, it does me nothing. I have to open it up, learn from it, and then I can go build the rocket ship, right? You have to have implementation and you have to have a process of observing to follow up. Here's another.
No offense, Gene, but I'm not getting on your rocket ship.
Hey, man. A lot of them are blowing up these days. I don't know if their rocket ship's much better than my rocket ship. This one from a longtime listener, Hunter Bradley. Hey, Hunter, shout out to you. And it's one that I'm probably going to get fired up about. How can organizations systematically measure and analyze leading and lagging indicators? And should this be the focus in preventing injuries? No. It is not.
I made a post on this week too.
Preventing injuries. Okay. Now, despite what the world has out here on LinkedIn and a lot of other places and conferences on the focus on leading and lagging indicators, that's data collection. Here's what the focus of safety has got to be: identifying hazards and putting controls in place. That's our focus, right?
Yep.
So I'm not against the metrics of leading and lagging indicators. They can give you a tremendous amount of information as to the trends. But, we've had this big debate about TRIR for a long time, about it being a lagging indicator, and some people want to get rid of TRIR altogether. And I will agree that it's not predictive. It's discriminatory against, smaller companies based on the mathematics. But replace it with what? What are we going to replace it with? Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the $100 million question, right, James? So,
right.
I made a post about this leading and lagging indicators crap this week. Again, I agree with you, James. It gives you a lot of information, but it predicts nothing. Neither one of them predicts anything. It's not a predictive tool. And so, you know, my advice in the post that I made, if, you know, if you guys want to listen to a lot of drivel, I post every day and I post on different topics. One of my posts was, let's look at our risk register. Have you identified all the foreseeable hazards, and are you taking measures to control them? That's the best way, in my professional opinion, it's the best way for you to manage your risk and to prevent injuries and accidents and fatalities. That's the best way.
You know, I'm going to add something else to that relating to leading indicators. I am a big fan of leading indicators. We're tracking leading indicators, but leading indicators are just as much non-predictors of future events as lagging indicators. All of us want this silver bullet in safety, right? Where if we could just get this formula, I can hire this contractor, and as long as they fit inside this formula, then they're not going to have an incident. And that's not reality. That's not reality. That doesn't mean we shouldn't track them. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do them. That doesn't mean we should use them as a metric for the trending evaluation of our safety management system. But there's no silver bullet. And to quote Dr. Martin, and I hate I'm going to do this, it just depends, right? It just depends.
All right. So James, we got something in the chat here from somebody that wrote in earlier. How do we capture, and I just moved up, so I apologize for this. I got to move it. It's the JHA question. I don't know if you have that on your screen.
Yeah, I see it. How do we capture or track job safety analysis or risk assessment? Should my team be doing this separately from a risk register? How do these differ or provide crossover? Okay. So when I think of hazard analysis, you know, well, let me back up and say this. We use a lot of acronyms in safety. It would be easier to solve the Ukrainian-Russian crisis than it is to get everybody to agree on what the acronyms mean. You agree with that, Dr. Martin? Like, yeah. There's a lot of different acronyms, so I'm going to use one. And this comes from my background in process safety. So I think you begin with a risk register with a preliminary hazard analysis. It's a 75,000 foot overview of what the job tasks are and what the hazards are. Then the next step in that process is similar like a JHA. So a JHA, job hazard analysis, and a job PHA are very similar when we're talking about general safety. And then we get down to something that we do on a daily basis in the job safety analysis. So the question is, should my team be doing this separately from a risk register? Yes. Absolutely. They have two different functions. The risk register is just a list of our risks, and that can also be risk to the organization that are not just safety risk. You know, financial risk could go on your risk register. Reputational risk could go on your risk register. All of those are tools that you work in conjunction together for a total risk management process. At least that's my opinion.
Let me break it down here, right? I mean, the risk register for your company is a broad view, right? It's a very broad view of the risks that you have. If you will, and if you'll allow me this, a JSA or a JHA is more of a risk register for the task, right? And so I'm not going to say it is a risk register, but if you break it down that way, you're basically making a list of risks for the task, and you're looking at the job steps and looking for ways to mitigate those risks, right? So are they separate? Absolutely, they're separate. Absolutely, they're separate. Would you have a task level thing on your risk register? I think if it was big enough and it was kind of a overarching 75,000 foot view, like James says, then yes. But more often than not, your JSA is a risk register in and of itself.
So let me add something about this as well when it comes to JSAs. I committed safety heresy at the OSHA Oil and Gas Conference last year or 2 years ago when I said, I don't even care if we do JSAs anymore. Most of the JSAs I see are poorly written. They only have rudimentary hazards, And the consideration of the hierarchy of controls always comes back to either an administrative control of be aware of your surroundings and PPE. If
And the
we've
other
done
thing
our
is,
job, hold on.
the other,
If we've done our job as safety professionals, right, then we will have identified the hazards in this PHA, JHA process and implemented the hierarchy of controls so that when workers get out there, it's not as an arduous of task of the JSA. Why do workers write bad JSAs? How much time have we spent with them, teaching them how to write good JSAs, right? We have I mean, it just drives me crazy because it's one of my pet peeves, right? When the incident investigation comes, we're really quick to point out that the workers did not complete the JSA appropriately. And I'm like, look, man, if the workers could identify all the hazards, create all the job steps, implement all the hierarchy of controls, what do we really need safety professionals and managers for anyway? So my view on the JSA is it should be the last in a long line of risk assessments and hazard identification and controls that most of the time what I see is not in place. It's just fill out a JSA and it becomes a paperwork exercise.
so here's the thing, James. In the companies that I've worked with and worked for, JHAs and JSAs they get put together, and that what the overall gist of what they are, they're supposed to be living documents, and they don't become living documents. They become paper in a file, and nobody ever looks at them. The whole purpose of doing the JSA when people first started doing these was to have it and have it be updated every single time we do the task, and be looking for new things, right? That doesn't happen. And you know what? I don't give a crap what people say. It doesn't happen. What I'd rather have people do is learn how to do the hazard identification process and to do it pre-task every time. Doesn't have to be written down on paper. Don't really care, right? But walk it through, discuss it, whoever's going to be on the job. And if it's just you, maybe you do want to write it down, kind of do it as an exercise. But I think JSAs and JHAs pre-done and on paper are a crutch, or they're not used at all. So if you're going to do it right, you need to sit down with the team before you do the task, do a 2-minute huddle or whatever you need to do, and talk about the risks and hazards, and make sure that everybody understands what their responsibilities and the risks are before you start.
I'll tell you what they are. After the incident, they're going to be that document that proves that the company either exercised reasonable due care and identified existing and predictable hazards and put the right controls in place, or it's going to be the document that's used by the inspectors and also in any type of litigation to point out that you did not exercise reasonable due care. So the other side, I see, shout out to Bill Vandesand, another member of our SAB and master trainer at Veriforce. You know, I agree with you, Bill, that it is training and education, but it's also, after that, having a process to follow up and look and evaluate the completeness of these JSAs. You know, when I look at a stack of 100 JSAs and I see the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again, it's obvious there's not a process of evaluation as to the quality of the JSA. So what are we asking the workers to do? In most cases, we're asking them to fill out a form. And as long as they fill out a form, we're happy with that. We're getting what we're asking for. So JSAs are a critical tool when used correctly. But I agree with you, Dr. Martin. Most of the time, what I see is it's a paperwork exercise that misses very large and serious hazards. Like, I'm not saying slip, trips, and falls is not a serious hazard, right? But when we're locking and tagging something out, and there's no lockout tag out mentioned on the JSA, but it talks about these things, slip, trips, and falls, and all that other stuff, we're missing the point.
Well, and if you're a safety professional and your company is making you do the JSAs, JHAs for the team, stop it. Stop it. If you're going to do a JSA or you're going to do a JHA, as a safety professional, you should be doing it with the team that's doing the task. If that's really what you want to do and you want to help them with hazard identification, do it with them. Don't sit back, pencil whip a JSA, send it to a client, and then be done with it, because that's exactly what's going to happen. So James, let's move on. What kind of documentation or dashboards are available for audit prep or internal reporting? This is right up your alley, so I'm going to throw it to you.
Okay, I do a tremendous amount of assessments across a lot of different industries and use a lot of different software. So I'm not going to give you a brand recommendation. I'm going to give you some things that you need to consider when selecting internal assessment software, right? One of the things I like about internal assessment software when you're assessing maybe sites, et cetera, is the ability to write extensive assessment comments related to a pre-established assessment protocol, right? A checklist. So you need to be able, it either comes loaded with a protocol or you need to be able to add that protocol to it. That's number one. Number two, you need to be able to make comments in that from an assessor standpoint as to what the corrective actions need. Number three, you need to be able to have a system that creates corrective actions and an ability to track that corrective action to closure. If that software has that assessment tool, I think it's very valuable for you, because then you start getting able to internalize and create those metrics that everybody's talking about when it comes to leading indicators, and you can get some data that you can use.
Yeah. So let's see if there's anything else in the chat here. I have a question for you, James. So what are some policies that we need to have some additional meat to? And I'm gonna key you up with one that I'm looking at with some clients lately, and that's lockout tagout, right? You have a policy for energy control, hazardous energy control, but then what do you need in addition to that to flesh out your policy? And then what other policies are there that we kind of need to do that with?
Well, let's talk about lockout tagout for a second, because I'm passionate about energy isolation and lockout tagout. Too many times what I see is we got a general policy, right? This is our lockout tagout. This is the training we give for affected workers. This is training we give for authorized workers, blah, blah, blah. But beyond that, I don't see written procedures for the machines. That's a requirement. I think oftentimes the training is superficial and not enough for an authorized worker to perform the task. And then related to energy isolation in 1910-147, the periodic inspection. We had an entire webinar last year, and I think maybe we did a risk matrix episode. If we didn't, we're going to do one on the periodic inspection, what you're supposed to be doing. It's not retraining the result of the periodic inspection. So I think that particular policy, one that people have, but they don't have the other components related to a total energy isolation program.
Respiratory protection.
I also think respiratory protection is another one, right? We have we did a podcast on this. You have a policy. The program administrator is often the HSE professional within the organization by policy. And when I do assessment, they're often shocked that they're named in the policy, because they didn't write the policy as the respiratory protection program administrator. And inside the standard, it says that the respiratory protection program administrator must be qualified by training or experience that's commensurate with the complexity of the program, right? So that's another component. You can have it in your program, but it needs to be a living activities, right? And many times people are shocked to have that. The other one I think that I've run across is not regulatory in nature, but it's your incident and accident investigation program, right? If most companies, when I do assessments, I ask, what is the methodology you use for your incident and accident investigations? And there are a lot out there. 5 whys, ABs, taproot, combination theories. There's a lot of different methodologies. And what I find is there's no methodology adopted inside the investigation program, and the practice doesn't even follow what's inside the written program, right? So that's a critical part of a safety management system is when it fails. You know, hopefully it fails and we don't get anybody hurt, but when it fails, we need to figure out what went wrong and put corrective actions in place. And most of what I see is the investigations are basically first reports of injuries, right? They give me some data, they tell me what happened, and then the corrective action is always retraining the worker. So those are some written programs I think that need to come to life.
Yep. Yep.
And
thank you for that.
For it.
So I got one here, and it popped up in the chat. There's a longer question, but I'm just going to cherry pick the top of this. How much effort will our team save using a contractor management platform versus in-house solution that we customize on our own? Be careful with contractor management solutions. Okay. Be careful. Be careful with software that you think that you're going to use to manage your safety management system. A lot of people that, and I'm not going to name names, but they sell off the shelf solutions, right? They tell you you can do everything. But what you are going to find is every single solution out there is going to need some tweaking, right? The time you saved is, you know, as good as the effort that you spend looking at these solutions and finding out whether or not your data and your processes fit into them, right? And if they don't, or that they're not close, you're going to spend an awful lot of time and an awful lot of money making them fit.
Let me chime in here, okay? I've been involved in contractor management platforms for almost 20 years. And I have seen the evolution of contractor risk platforms like Veriforce's over these past 20 years. And things have gotten a lot better as technology has advanced and people have started understanding risk within their supply chain and the contractor network. Now, the first question is, how much effort will our team save using contractor management platform versus an in-house solution? Tons. Tons. Particularly if you have numbers of contractors. So when we're talking about a contractor pre-qualification process, in my opinion, this is what that looks like from a hiring client standpoint. Questionnaires, insurance verification, right? Program reviews against standards, training documentation, and evaluation of that training documentation supported by some type of audit process to go see, do contractors do what they say they do? So when you're a safety team in-house, doing that individually is usually a tremendous amount of resources that are better spent, in my opinion, in the field. That's what contractor management platforms really allow you to do, is get some pre-qualification data, information, some initial verification, so that you can spend some time going out and seeing, do contractors do what they say they do? And that is an important element often overlooked when we're talking about risk management of contractors and subcontractors.
Great. Thanks, James. So I don't see any other questions here. I think people are being shy today. Are there any other pet peeves you want to go over, James, while we still have them on the line and we can pontificate on what we think are solutions to some of the screaming problems?
Let me think for a second here. Some things have come up here lately. I'm just looking through here. Okay, here's one. Great debate. Let's talk about it. Employee engagement. Because I'm going to make an announcement right now. And people do this in sort of their safety management systems to get employees engaged. So we appreciate all today, and we've had some people that have been here with us live in this podcast, and even more that are going to participate in watching in their own time via YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Veriforce's webpage, Spotify, etc. And in an effort to give back, we're going to give out, what are we giving out, Dr. Martin?
We're giving out Veriforce swag.
Right? Veriforce swag for participation, and we'll have a process, and we'll go through a drawing or something, and we'll contact you and send you some Veriforce swag for participating in our podcast. Now, that same type of process is often used to get employees to participate in their internal safety programs, right? Giveaways, financial incentives, etc. What's your thoughts on incentive programs within safety management systems for employees?
I know what OSHA thinks.
What does OSHA think?
Well, I've read some articles from OSHA, and maybe I know David Bates is on this. Maybe he can enlighten us in the chat. You know, when you start incentivizing good behaviors and no accidents, right? We tend to get what? Less reporting, right? Or if we make it team-based, we get more more shaming of people when they do participate, because they want to make sure that they get whatever the incentive is, whether it be a pizza party or a little trinket or something of that. So I'm not a big fan of that. I am a big fan of writing into your job description what the participation factor is going to be in the safety program, and holding people's feet to the fire to do that as part of their promotion structure and or yearly evaluation. I am a fan of that, right? Because as much as we say safety is everyone's responsibility, if it's not specifically in the job description, it's very hard to describe to people what and other duties as assigned means. And I think it is in that as and other duties as assigned, but I'd rather see it be called out, right? Donald says a paycheck is an incentive. I kind of agree, right? I mean,
Well,
we're here
I
to
agree with
work.
that too. I mean, come on now. We're adults. It's always aggravated me that you think that okay, we're gonna put you in a drawing. If you will just work safe and not get anybody hurt, we'll for man. This is not going to go. What we're providing rules and processes and procedures so you can go home to that child's birthday party, that child's pizza party.
Yep.
I shouldn't have to beg grown people to do things that are necessary for their own health and safety. Now, having said that, I think the best way to get people to participate in your safety program is, number one, care about their opinion. Go to the place where the work happens and talk to the people that do the work. Find out what works. Find out what's not working. Find out what keeps them up at night. Encourage them to participate through safety committees, etc. But I think the data has shown that employee incentive programs, when it comes to safety, greatly discourages reporting of incidents.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to take a moment here. Thank you, David Bates, former area director. He says this first rears its head during OSHA VPP audits. It was frowned upon if the incentive program discouraged workers from reporting injuries and illnesses. And I haven't seen anything really good, David and everybody else on this program, that kind of doesn't do that. So I would stay away from it, and I would use some of the ideas that James and I gave you in the last few minutes. I want to jump back here. After I shamed people for not asking questions, April writes, what recommendations do you have for an effective permit to work program? Thanks, April.
Thanks, April.
Go ahead, James. What recommendations do you have for an effective permit to work program?
Okay. There's a couple of different ways to go about this process. I've seen it done a couple of different ways. And one way, the hiring client controls the permitting process. Contractors are trained on the permitting process and use the hiring client's permitting process. Other ways I've seen, the hiring client says we're hands off. And this is particularly when you're outside of facilities. Like, I've never worked in a refinery where you get to use your own permit as a contractor, right? But sometimes in the upstream oil and gas industry, because of the locations of where people work, and there's not really a centralized command center, control center, if you will, they have the contractors create their own permit to work system. The best way, April, I've seen this work is to be able to use permits and issue permits electronically. Now, you can have a permit on paper out there on site for sure. But if I'm working a lot of permits back at the office, I'd like to know when a permit's issued. I'd like to be able to see the permit. I'd like to be able to withdraw the permit. And the only way to do that is through an electronic permit to work system.
April has another question. Any suggestions for a good electronic tool for permitting? And she says we're in a terrible service area. So cloud-based may or may not work.
May not work. I'll tell you what, April, I don't want to call out specific companies here and give those type of endorsements, but I'll tell you what I will do. If you'll shoot me a message, we'll get together offline and I'll talk to you about some of the ones I like and some of the things I don't like about some of the others.
Great. And I just wanted to say, Kimberly Elliott had a great addition to our incentive stuff. She says, we offer certifications as awesome bonus, like free CPR and AED certs, which is great. A lot of people love that. Take home to their family. OSHA 10 and 30 courses, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I would say even some of the things that us as safety professionals take, people are dying to have more education. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people are always asking me, how can I learn more about XYZ? And there are a lot of good resources out there. So Kimberly, thanks for saying that.
Hey, check out what you just said. 30 people applied day one when we launched out of 250 people. I think
that's crazy. That's outstanding. Outstanding. So James, we're kind of coming up on 45 minutes here. So I don't see a whole lot of other things in the chat. I love these. This is great. I love this is kind of like great back and forth for me with you and with our listeners. Hopefully you guys out there love these kind of chats that we have too. We're planning on doing them every month, as we've said before. Stump the Chump. You know, I don't know if you can stump us because we'll always have an opinion on something. Whether it's right or wrong or indifferent, we'll have an opinion for you. But thank you for listening, our loyal listeners. If you want to share this podcast with other people, we have links that we send out where you can sign up and get notified every week of when we're going to be on, which is Tuesday at noon. For the live session, we're also on Spotify shortly after this episode airs live. Spotify, pretty much anywhere now that you can get podcasts, right? Apple. You can listen to us, just the audio version. Please like and subscribe in all those places. You can go to YouTube on Veriforce. They post our episodes. This is episode 97. We got a big 100 coming up soon. But thank you everybody for listening and helping us bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. James, you want to take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. The question is, before we go, what is the name of the podcast? You're in the Risk Matrix, baby. The Risk Matrix podcast. Put that in on Apple, Spotify, on Veriforce. The Risk Matrix is viewed on the Veriforce YouTube channel. The Veriforce YouTube channel is where you can see it. And if you found us on LinkedIn, Dr. Martin and I and Veriforce will repost the links to this podcast.
Yeah, and absolutely. If you see us on LinkedIn, make sure that you add us or to follow us. James and I both put out content every week. And we put out a lot of different things. Some of the stuff that we talked about here today, if you want to go back and look at some of the posts that James called me out upon, you can go to my LinkedIn, add me as a follow. And I got a lot of posts on there. Love to have you chime in there as well.
Same here. Again,
James?
Thank you for attending live today, and thank you especially for those that will watch this podcast on the various sources that we talked about. We do this for you. We do this for you. And I also want to thank every one of you for what you do to bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. So till next time, y'all keep doing that and roll
Tide.